One of the many things revealed by this pandemic is just how many governors and local officials simply don't get religion or religious freedom. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. This is Breakpoint. Whoever said eternal vigilance is the price of liberty was certainly correct, especially in times of crisis. For instance, it took a lawsuit to convince Illinois Governor Pritzker to allow religious people to leave their homes and exercise their freedom of religion. Under his original executive order, the governor would permit, quote, essential businesses and operations to have gatherings of 10 or more people, but not religious gatherings. Even stay-in-your-car drive-in services, as Pastor Steve Cassell of the beloved church found out when he was issued a cease and desist order, were forbidden with threats of arrest and prosecution. Cassell and the Thomas More Society responded by filing a lawsuit. As Thomas More Senior Counsel Peter Breen said, keeping liquor stores open but indefinitely shutting down churches and religious ministries violates our Constitution and our most basic liberties. If liquor stores are essential, so are churches. Well, the governor quickly issued a replacement executive order explicitly allowing the free exercise of religion, as well as permitting gatherings that comply with social distancing. While Governor Pritzker is a particularly easy one to pick on here, he's certainly not alone. Kansas Governor Laura Kelly issued an order that exempted 26 types of secular activities from its gathering ban, but specifically prohibited churches and other religious service or activities with 10 or more people, even if they obeyed social distancing requirements. Well, that order only lasted until the Alliance Defending Freedom filed a federal lawsuit. The governor has since issued a new order that didn't single out churches. Still, as ADF Senior Counsel Tyson Langhofer said, it's a shame that it took a federal lawsuit in order to finally prompt the governor to issue an order she could have easily issued in the first place, one that doesn't unconstitutionally target churches. It's more than a shame, actually. It's revealing. From governors' mansions to city halls across the country, from major metropolises like Bill de Blasio's New York City to small cities and even smaller townships in the Bible Belt like Chattanooga, Tennessee and Greenville, Mississippi, state and local officials are demonstrating just how badly they understand America's first freedom. It's bad enough, as another ADF official admitted, that ADF and the Thomas More Society and other religious freedom groups simply can't possibly monitor every situation popping up across the nation. Last week on Twitter, Southern Seminary professor Andrew Walker wondered aloud why there'd been such a general mismanagement of religious liberty at the gubernatorial and municipal levels. Well, I think, like so many other things I could point to during this time, this is a problem COVID-19 certainly didn't create. So many cultural fault lines and foundational weaknesses of our theology and our society are being revealed and exploited during this pandemic. Specifically, I think Princeton professor Robert George best articulated why we're seeing so many local officials fail so miserably on religious liberty right now. It was during an episode on the Breakpoint podcast. Too many Americans, he told me, including lawmakers and even Christians, essentially see religion as a hobby, kind of like football or going to the ballet or collecting stamps. These things are, of course, non-essential. But in our constitutional tradition, George continued, religion is singled out for special care. Our founding fathers who bequeathed to us this great constitutional government understood religion has to do with conscience. Of course, the government's fully entitled to curtail religious freedoms in a national emergency. That's something recognized by both constitutional scholars and theologians, both contemporary and in the past. In our podcast conversation, Dr. George clearly articulated the specific conditions under which religious freedoms can be limited by the state. First, the government has to show a compelling interest for limiting freedom of expression, such as public safety. For example, slowing the spread of COVID-19 could be deemed a compelling interest. Second, the state cannot single out religious activities for restrictions that do not apply to other areas of life. That's a point that Governors Pritzker and so many others are clearly struggling to grasp. Third, if a compelling interest does exist, the government can only curtail religious liberty in the least restrictive ways possible. Any restrictions imposed cannot be more burdensome than necessary. So, for example, as Mayor de Blasio of New York clearly missed in his irrational threats against churches, any restrictions have to be temporary. Look, we've clearly reached a point where we know now we have to re-educate ourselves and our lawmakers about the privileged place of religious freedom in our form of constitutional government. Religious freedom is not a second-class right, and religion is not a lifestyle choice or a hobby. But when Governor Pritzker announces, like he did last week, even after having his first idea smacked down, that gatherings over 50, including churches, would have to remain closed for more than a year until a vaccine is developed, good heavens, we've got our work cut out for us. I mean, Governor Pritzker has a law degree from a law school that bears his family name. To paraphrase Professor Diggory from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, bless me, what are they teaching them in law schools these days? And while we're asking that question, let's also ask, and what are we teaching in our churches these days about religious freedom? For Breakpoint, I'm John Stonestreet.